Hey guys, this is Shadsource11 here, and here is my review of Shadow of the Colossus, a revolutionary game which really shows what the PS2 was capable of. This game is well known as one of the PS2's greatest, but what are my opinions on it? So let us journey to the ancient land to get this review started. The story for Shadow of the Colossus is about the main hero, Wanda, who travels to a distant land in hope to revive a girl known as Mono. When he arrives there, a spirit simply known as Dormin tells him that he needs to defeat 16 Colossi in order to bring Mono back alive. However, he also says it comes at a terrible price. To be perfectly honest, I found the storyline to be rather dull, and the cutscenes really dragged on. And I would have also liked some backstory of what happened and how Mono was put into an eternal sleep. I mean, when you start the game, you don't even know anything about these characters. But either way, the story does its job, so moving on. Shadow of the Colossus has two main gameplay elements to it. The first one is journeying to each Colossi. You start out at the Shrine of Worship, and in order to find your target, you have to hold up your sword in light, and it will shine in a specific direction, and you have to use that as like a compass to guide you to the Colossus. To get around the land, you ride on your horse Agro, and at some parts you do some platforming. It's minor, but it's still there. Sometimes, depending on length or directions, it can take between 5 to around about 30 minutes to find your target. The second part of the gameplay is fighting the giant Colossi. Now here's where the game gets good. You arrive to the destination that your sword has guided you to, and you then get confronted with a mighty Colossus who you have to take down. When fighting them, you have to try and figure out what would be the best solution to beating him. All Colossi are different, and rather than brute force and fast attacks, these fights rely on strategy and patience. If you shine your sword, the light will reveal certain weak points the Colossus may have. The Colossi come in all different shapes and sizes, from hulking beasts to wild boars and majestic dragons. What makes fighting them great is that each Colossus takes a different strategy to kill. Some could involve shooting a weak spot, some could be swimming around them, while others could involve getting to a higher vantage point. And they're all done in such a clever and unique way that part of the fun was finding out how best to beat them. Of course, some were easier to figure out than others, and I'm sure you got your ass kicked at least once before conquering some of them. This can however lead to a lot of frustrating moments. But if you're really struggling with a Colossus, Dormin will give you a little hint which can help. And when fighting the Colossi, you don't have much of an arsenal of weapons. You just have a sword, bow and arrows, and your horse, and to be honest, that's all you'll really need. The bow and arrows were used mainly for attacking a Colossus' weak spot, or getting their attention, and the sword was your primary means of taking them down. When climbing on the Colossi, if you have the sword equipped, a weak point will be shown by a bright blue marking, and that is where you cause the most damage. But rest assured, the Colossus will put up quite a fight to make sure you don't win. Once you beat the Colossus, you get to see the mighty beast crumble before you. Then the spirit enters your body, and you then get taken back to the Shrine of Worship, where when there, the idol statue of the Colossus you've just slayed crumbles. Then it's a process of getting to the next one, until you've beaten all 16 of them. Some may see this as more of a boss battle run than an actual adventure game, but either way, I still think the gameplay is really well done, with fun and challenging Colossi to fight. It's certainly a game like no others, I can tell you that. So now for graphics. Well, I think Shadow of the Colossus shows some excellent graphics for PS2 standards. The vast landscape of the distant land you're in looks very impressive, almost like something out of a Lord of the Rings movie. The characters animate smoothly and swiftly, plus some great effects are used in the game, such as dust, water, sand, and many others, so it looks really realistic. The Colossi look very impressive, and you can tell a lot of great work has gone into the designs for them. When fighting the Colossi, you can also press the L1 button to get a cinematic shot to focus the camera on the Colossus, so you can see the impressive beast right up. The only problem I have with the graphics is the frame rate. When fighting the Colossi, the frame rate can go a bit choppy at times. It doesn't lag, but at the same time it just doesn't feel smooth either. Aside from that though, Shadow of the Colossus' graphics look great and gives a very cinematic feel at times. Okay, now for music and sound. Shadow of the Colossus was notable for having a great soundtrack, and I must agree with this. The music that plays when fighting the Colossi is just epic. It shows a great orchestral score, and it helps to keep the battles more exciting and epic as well. To be honest, you couldn't really ask for better music in the game. I reckon it sounds good enough to even be movie soundtrack worthy. There's not really much to be said about the sound, as it sounds good and is not an important part in the game. So moving on. Now for voice acting. Well, the voice acting in this game is very scarce. The characters don't speak English, they speak a different fantasy kind of language. It is subtitled so you know what they're saying, but there is very little dialogue in the very long cutscenes. In the end though, the voice acting really doesn't matter. So the music is outstanding, the sound is decent, and the voice acting is meh. Okay, so what rants do I have with this game? Well, there are certain problems with this game that need to be addressed. Firstly is the game's controls. Controlling Wanda can often feel clunky at times, and it can sometimes feel stiff, as sometimes it feels like you've really got to force the controls to get them to work. It's like they do respond, but they don't really feel natural at the same time. Controlling aggro can also be really annoying, especially when firing arrows on him, because there's really no way to steer the horse when you're aiming your bow, so a lot of the time you might end up crashing with him. I don't know what it is, but maybe these controls are a bit too realistic. Also, the game's camera can be quite annoying. As I said before, you can focus the camera on the Colossus, but this in turn can make it hard to tell where you're going, so you could end up running off the edge or crashing into stuff. It's also really hard to get the camera into a comfortable position to see what the hell is going on. Controlling it with the right analog stick can feel clunky, and it's overall just a pain in the ass controlling the camera. Now keep in mind, when I say the controls on camera are bad, they're not so bad that they kill the game like Ninja Bread Man, but they did interfere with the gameplay at times and were too annoying to simply ignore, so I just had to point them out. I also didn't really like travelling from the Shrine of Worship to the Colossus, because it could take a really long time to get there sometimes, and whilst you're journeying, there are no regular enemies to fight, and there are very few platforming segments, none of which are particularly challenging. Now, I can see what the developers were going for, to give it the feel of a solitude land, but this in turn makes travelling to the Colossus feel like a waste of gameplay. Getting to the Colossus fight is almost like your reward for enduring through an area of the Forbidden Land. I also hated the boss fight against Barsaran. To beat him, you have to get him to walk over water jets, but when you try and lure him, he always shoots lightning at you, which nearly always hits you. So friggin' cheap. And he has to be all the way over the water jet, or nothing happens. And sometimes when he's over it, the water jet itself turns off. Just, I hate you, Barsaran. And that's pretty much all my complaints. Overall, Shadow of the Colossus is a great PS2 title and a fun and challenging experience. Whilst the game is really good, I'd be lying if I said it was perfect. As I said before, the controls and camera were annoying at times, and it could make the game much more frustrating than it needed to be. Also, the game doesn't have massive replay value, as if you've beaten a Colossus once, you pretty much know how to take them down every other time, and it does lose its appeal over time. But to what it all boils down to, it's the core gameplay where Shadow of the Colossus truly shines, and I still recommend this game if you have the patience for these kind of things. I also heard of a PS3 remake of this game coming soon. All I ask for is improved controls and a more comfortable camera, then I'm happy. It has its flaws, but in the end, Shadow of the Colossus is a fun game, which is cleverly designed and is definitely an original gaming experience. And that's at least saying something. And so, Tom's final score for this game? 8.2 out of 10.